Well, after the last time out, it did not take promoters very long, ladies and gentlemen, to sign in a return bout Tito Santana, Intercontinental Champion of the World, against this man in the form of challenger, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. What do you have in the green sack?
That's a heck of a lot of money right there. Yeah, that's the kind of money that comes with belts. Don't touch
Paper.
Nothing. Don't touch nothing that's the Macho Man's property. You understand that? Everything is sacred. Everything is completely sacred.
Look at
that. My career is sacred. My money is sacred.
Good.
The Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship belt will fall. Yeah, don't bet against that. No. Tito Santana, you met the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and I bet you're afraid that you did.
Elizabeth.
Push your head.
Elizabeth, would you pick a winner in this one between the Macho Man and Tito Santana?
Go ahead, let him know.
Definitely going to be the Macho Man.
Well, you're prejudiced now. I know that, Elizabeth.
Wait a minute. She said what was on her mind right there. No problem at
You
all.
have an influence over her, of course.
I got an influence over everybody in the entire world. They're all scared of me, yeah. They're all scared of me, aren't they, Elizabeth, right? Intimidating my opponents. Who's the #1 guy I'm intimidating? Hulk Hogan, right?
Oh, it's true, yes.
And that's something, yeah.
You're
A
putting
lame
words in our
duck.
mouth, Randy.
World heavyweight champion, lame duck. Yeah, political term.
It is
but this is an
political.
athletic contest, yeah. And the intimidation
Am I
factor
upsetting you?
is there.
I don't mean to upset you.
And the beat goes on.
All right,
And
we'll
the beat
find out.
goes on.
Thank you.
And the beat goes on.
And thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
The Macho Man, Randy Savage, in a return bout to go against Intercontinental title holder, the great Tito Santana, as part of the next big card right here in town. Don't miss it. You know, in a return match, it will be Macho Man Randy Savage beating my guest at this time, and the Intercontinental title will be on the line. I have never heard fans in the Boston Garden explode Tito Santana like they did for this one. And again, Randy Savage involved in another tremendously controversial decision.
You know, Gene, I'm a little disturbed about this whole thing because I wanted the producers to show the people here in Boston exactly what happened, because no matter what I come out here and say, Gene, no matter what I say, Macho Man is going to come out here and lie about it. Macho Man, I was not able to get the producer to show what happened this week, but I guarantee you, man, I'm going to stay on them, and by next week, they're going to have to show what happened. What really makes me mad, Gene, more than anything else, is the fact that Macho Man had been bragging about the fact that right here in Boston, he was going to take the belt away from me. I know damn well now, Macho Man, why you were so sure that you were going to take the belt away from me here in Boston. I want you to feel this, Mean Gene. That's what he knocked me out with. Steel, solid steel.
It's got to be 32
Knocked
ounces.
me right out. Macho Man, I took it to you right here in Boston, my man, because Boston happens to be my town. I'll put a whipping to you, brother. And several times, I've seen the film. I saw you go for that on several occasions, Macho Man. You had it all figured out, man. That's what really gets me hot. Te garantizo, cobarde. Te garantizo, aquí en Boston tengo la oportunidad de luchar en contra de ti otra vez. Aquí gané una título una vez. Tengo la oportunidad, Macho Man. Te garantizo, cobarde. Ni esto te va a ayudar. Estoy preparado para hacerte que pagues como un perro, cobarde. ¡Arriba!
I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
It doesn't matter what you think.
Shit.
You didn't say that. Tell me you did not just say that.
There's nothing anyone can do, there's nothing anyone can say. There's little can be done right now to make this go away. Cliched simple platitudes do not to quell the dread, and the breadth and gravity just send me crawling back to bed. It's useless in this moment to say we'll get through this somehow. There's time enough for action, but that time isn't now. Soon we can start planning for what may come to be. But what I could really use right now is a bacon roll and a cup of tea. I don't need positive affirmations, I need to scream and bawl. The unrealistic expectations won't help with this at all. This is shit. Well, this is shit. I'm not expecting answers because they're out of your remit. I'm not looking for solutions, just for someone to admit that this is shit.
Backbone Wrestling Network, welcome to episode number 2 of The Shit Take. Once again, I am your host, Shawn Kidd, and as our last episode, and per usual moving forward, I am joined by Keith Langston. Keith, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. I really enjoyed the first episode we did. Really good debates there. The ending take there with the Demolition and Road Warriors will probably make a lot of people mad that listen to this based on who loves the Road Warriors, but I don't think we were wrong. Whatever. Who cares? That's really the way we are. So we're gonna do the same thing tonight.
Yep.
We're gonna each pick a take that most people would say, "Hey, that's a shit take." And this episode, we're gonna start with yours.
Okay.
And so this one was interesting to me because I didn't think about this one or have really thought about it. But kind of when you do, and like, okay, let's hear what Keith has to say about it. So this is about Tito Santana and Randy Savage, and your thought is that match should have took place at WrestleMania 2 versus how it played out. So I'm going to let you start and play it out and go from there.
All right. So I was doing some thinking about this. One time I on GFA Live, I must have been high or something because I said that, and this you actually may love this take. I said Tito versus Savage should have taken place at WrestleMania 3. It should have been like a.
Oh my God! I had that in my notes.
And the reason why I said that is because, and this is not a new thing for me. I have gone down this rabbit hole before of watching Tito and Randy Savage matches because they had such a hot feud, such a white hot feud over the Intercontinental Championship, and I think that this could have been something that carried over for multiple years because let's be honest, his fucking feud with George Steele carried over for fucking multiple years with Savage and Steele to the point that your take on you changed my mind on my favorite wrestling match of all time with Savage and Steamboat, and then you went, Keith, the match ended because George Steele got involved. And I went,
what? I was right.
And you took like the steam out of I went, wow, you know what? You're absolutely right. Like everything that you said was the whole matchup, this perfect, beautiful, orchestrated, choreographed match that Savage put together in his head just all goes down the shitter because George the Animal Steele is on the outside. Like it's so obnoxious. And
it took me out.
And the thing is that in the rankings of Intercontinental Champions, Savage is up there for me because he had the longevity of holding the championship for a long time. He beat a pretty good champion with beating Tito. He loses it in a great way. I will say he loses it in a great match. I will say that. But the thing that I loved is that he elevated that title to the main event status, like immediately upon winning it. His first friggin' promo out of the gate at the Garden when he wins it, he says, "Looks like it's a bad night for Hulk Hogan." Like he immediately throws the world champ under the bus and says, "You're on notice." I love that. So for me, Savage is one of the best, if one of the greatest Intercontinental champions of all time. Absolutely.
So before you go, so who do you consider in that realm? Like if he's one of the greatest, who are the other ones you would consider in the realm? Just out of curiosity. Tito's up there for me, by the way.
Tito is up there?
I like Tito as champion.
I mean, Savage actually might be the top only because, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon's up there, I think. Really? See, I like Ramon when he was Intercontinental champion. I thought he put on a lot of decent matches. He was always defending his championship. He seemed to always be on Monday Night Raw as the champ, which I liked. Hennig is good, but he's too short,
And you don't really see him in a lot of those highlighted matches. Like his highlighted matches are ones that he loses.
Exactly, and I think that
Von Erich, yeah.
Bret Hart is a great champion. I liked Bret because again, Bret would be on TV every single week. I like when the champion is on TV, even for the superstars, because in my mind, Bret wrestling a jobber, that jobber had a shot at the Intercontinental title. That's always what I thought,
I gotcha.
And I like that. See, I would say if I was younger, I would say Shawn Michaels, but Shawn Michaels his Intercontinental title runs are iffy at best. His winning the championships were always great, but iffy at best on his matches as the champ.
A future shit take will be their WrestleMania 10 ladder match. We'll have that one day.
See, that's a hard shit take because no one knew what to expect. So the first ladder match is as basic as it comes. You're right, but it is a shit take. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a total shit take for sure.
I mean, as far as like not future, but like more current guys, like everybody always talks about Jericho because he's had it the longest or the most. That doesn't mean shit. I had this conversation about Gunther where it's like Gunther was great, but because he did defend it all the time, but he was kind of always like
quality of opponent too sometimes.
Yeah. And I think, so Savage might be my favorite. I think the greatest of all time. I really do.
That's fair.
He had the longevity. His quality of opponents for a while it was awesome, but then he got stuck in those friggin' feuds with Steel, and that just seemed to, bog things down. But getting to that, one of the things I love to do is because whenever I have these discussions about these older champions and what they did and how they ran the circuit and everything, and a lot of times when you say, well, this person wasn't a great champion because they didn't really sell out, I look at who they wrestled and who they were wrestling with around the circuit. Because a lot of times, like, you looked at the Warrior when the Warrior was the world champion. The Warrior was in 6-man tag matches with the previously shit-taked LOD against the previously loved, well, shitty at that time, Demolition. But that was what he was doing basically during the big chunk of his run as champion. So you have to look at who he was wrestling. Savage wrestled Tito a lot during before and after his victory for the championship.
It's like 7 matches on YouTube alone.
Yeah.
And you pulled up.
And I think if you watch them, they're fantastic. Now I gave you 2 matches to watch.
You did.
And you had a lot of fun with one of them.
Oh, so much fun.
The first one is, and I said the reason why I picked this is because number one, it's a nefarious or a notorious rather nefarious and notorious. It's a notorious show. It's the October 19th, 1985 show in Puerto Rico, where Tito's the champion defending against Randy Savage. And the first thing you said is you go, this match is garbage.
That's one of my exact things. This match is shit.
This match is shit. But the reason why it's shit is because it's raining like the entire time.
Keith, it took me out because I didn't expect it. It's raining. The ring, literally, the ropes look like string. They can't do anything.
It's not only raining; it's like pouring. And there's like 150 people, half of them with umbrellas. It's just
in this big stadium, and there's like all these people with umbrellas by the ring. That's all that's there.
And that's it. Like everybody else is left. There's even people like holding up chairs over their heads to act as umbrellas. The match is bonkers. It's bananas. But and Tito and Savage are both soaking wet. There's puddles in the ring. Like the match itself is just so bad. The whole show that whole show is like that. I've watched that show.
The main event was it Stud versus Hogan? I think it was in the main event.
Was it Stud versus? It might have been Stud versus.
I think it was. Yeah. Could you imagine those two in that freaking? I don't know.
It's. I'm trying to think. At one point, I swear it's Hercules, or it could be like. Hercules was in an 85. I can't remember this. Somebody that's in the ring that's like literally.
He was there. Yeah.
Like literally slipping and sliding all over because the puddles in the ring. Like it reminded. I don't know. Not many people saw it, but did you ever see that movie? Here Comes the Boom with Kevin James.
No, I never saw it.
Where he's like the MMA fighter. So at one point he's in an MMA fight outside and it's pouring out and the ring is just like it's just wet everywhere. And he's like, do we call this? And they're like, no, you don't call it. You fight in the ring. And that's all it is slipping and sliding and falling and pratfalls and all this. It's so friggin' goofy. And that's exactly what this match is. A lot of stalling in this match. And I think it's because they're trying to just get the water out of their eyes. It's such a bad match. But the reason why I put it on there, like I said, is because I wanted at least to have it out there that Savage didn't fight Steamboat after he won the title. He was fighting him before he won the championship, like kind of around the circuit. And the next match that I threw up on there is kind of another I felt classic. I'm trying to think I don't even know if I know when it is, but
the second match?
Yeah.
It's from the Spectrum, May 31st, 1986.
Oh, thank you for
You're welcome.
the date. I appreciate that. Yeah. And that's just, I mean, and it's classic Tito and Savage. Like they're just going at it tooth and nail, ripping each other apart. It's a great matchup. It's a great match. It's a great fight. It's kind of like a brutal, just brutal fight between these two guys. At one point, like the ref gets knocked out, and isn't Savage? I think Savage, is he bleeding? I can't even tell because
he is, but like Tito is just savagely kicking his head. Like it's just like they're beating the fuck out of each other. Tito is savage.
It's a great matchup. Now that kind of cuts to what we talked about, where I said I think that they should have had the match at Mania 2 for the Intercontinental Championship.
Okay, so let's level set a little bit. So the first match in '85, that was one of the earlier title defenses. You saw Tito versus Randy. The second match you had me watch was in May, which was a few months after. And so February of '86 is in the Boston Garden. That's where Savage won the belt. And then WrestleMania is like a month or so after the half. Yeah. All right. So so go ahead with the rationale reasoning. Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things where after he wins the championship, he's still fighting Tito. Like Savage is still fighting Tito pretty much up until
May. Yeah.
Pretty much up until Mania.
Yep.
Now,
and after Mania, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, they're pretty much feuding all the way up until I think Tito enters Strikeforce, really, and then Savage kind of shifts to Ricky Steamboat, and then of course there's the George the Animal Steel kind of stuff. But at one point, I think it was November of '86, Savage is like his November of '86, he wrestles like another
Billy Jack Haynes. He defends against.
He defends against everybody on television. He actually has
Jake Roberts, heel versus heel. That was
one of the most active Intercontinental champions. That's why I say, dare I say, he's the best.
There's actually a Honky Tonk Man face match versus Savage from one of the house shows too. He defended against the face Honky Tonk Man. Think about that.
Suspenders Honky, that piece of shit.
Yes, it was Suspenders Honky. Yep. Yep. It's just a prelude to the greatness. There's a prelude to the greatness their feud would have been.
Is that what it was? Okay, great. Actually, you know what? That's the funny thing is that the only person that I liked Honky Tonk Man facing when he was the champ was Savage, because Savage could pull a good match out of anybody. Now, it's funny because on the last Should Take, the first thing we talked about Flair and Harley Race and who's the better champion and who's the better wrestler. And I said that Flair's probably on everybody's list as the greatest of all time. Much like Demolition is my favorite tag team of all time, Savage is my favorite of all time.
But I think most people would agree with you in that realm as far as Savage.
I think Savage is the greatest. Pete has said that Savage is the greatest television worker of all time because he knew how to, which is true, because he knew how to work a match in like a 5-6 minute. He could tell an entire story in 5 or 6 minutes. I think Savage is the greatest of all time because he had everything. He had the look. He had, everything. He had the look.
Can I give you one shit take I have on Savage? Just one. Okay,
go ahead.
I agree with you. I love Savage. Yeah. I love his matches. For me, though, sometimes he takes like 50% of his matches, or even sometimes higher, are just him selling and getting his ass kicked. Especially when he's in his face run as world champion.
Sure.
His offense, it's like literally he's 80% getting his ass kicked, 20% offense during his world title run. That takes me out a little bit. And then that trend goes into the WCW too, by the way. So sometimes I think he oversells he doesn't have a lot of offense and he just gets the fuck beat out of him a lot sometimes, which bugs me, but it's still great.
In 91 though.
Oh no, that 91 run's really, really good. Yeah. But for the most part, if you look at historically his career, it's a lot of getting like even in the Tito match, he got his ass handed to him in that second match. Like Tito just beat the fuck out of him.
Well, I think that's because Savage knew that at the very least. Well, I think that's a Vince McMahonism too, because Hogan always did that. Hogan always got his ass kicked for like 99% of the match, and then came back with the 3 fists, the big boot, and then the body slam if the guy was over 300 pounds or not. And then he
post 87 Hogan, yes. Before that, it was kind of even keel.
Well, yeah, and we talked about that last time around. So we don't have to rehash that. But
no.
But you're right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's a babyface trait, though, is that they get, it's almost like how every babyface tag team has to do the hot tag, because the Ricky Morton tag kind of thing, or it's just it happens where
it also goes back in the day. You're not watching these matches back to back to back. They're spread out. You don't really feel it, see it, and then when you watch it in a big like.
You watch it in the vacuum, you see it totally. Yeah.
But I don't. That doesn't negate Savage is probably one of the greatest of all
but
time.
You're right.
It's
not even a shit take. It's a valid take.
Yeah.
I think it's a valid take. But so we get to WrestleMania 2. Now, WrestleMania 2, as we know, it was in three different coliseums. It was in three different stadiums. It was set across, each one had 4 matches each. Savage had the honors, I guess, of being on the first leg of the tour of the Nassau Coliseum, where he fights George the Animal Steel for the Intercontinental title. It's
random, just random.
It is.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I was thinking of too, and I'll tell you why. Oh, and then I just want to say in the last leg of the tour, as you said, Terry and it's Dory, right? But Dory's going by Haas. So Terry and Haas Funk defeat Tito Santana and the Junkyard Dog. It's the first of many of Tito's WrestleMania losses. He wins in the first match in the first WrestleMania and doesn't win another one until I think 9.
But his opponent's a jobber at WrestleMania 1.
I know, he fights a jobber at 1.
Yes.
Still wins though. But anyway, so I thought about this. I was thinking about this when I was thinking about my prep for this. So at the previous WrestleMania, we had the Intercontinental Championship was Greg Valentine and Junkyard Dog. And Valentine successfully defends the championship against Junkyard Dog. He loses by countout, but he doesn't lose the championship. We move forward. The tag team championship is lost, where the Sheiky Baby and Volkov beat Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. So we've already had, like, at an initial WrestleMania, we've had the first ever championship change.
And Keith, I would argue that Tito should have faced Valentine at WrestleMania 1. I would have even argued that.
I would have argued that as well, because that was the hot feud going in.
Absolutely.
I think Valentine was kind of like heating up against with Junkyard Dog as well. So I think that's where they went with that. Maybe that the thinking behind it is they wanted somebody who everybody would get behind to, and I like how you call him a jobber. It was the executioner. It was Buddy Rose.
But Tito wins the belt back from Valentine in the summer of that same year. So,
right. Yeah. So I think you could have done that. So this is twice now that we should have had Tito in the Intercontinental title. 3 if you count our other take of Tito should have fought Savage at 3.
But this is going to lead to my point after you talk about your thought on this. So go ahead.
Okay, so to get to my thought, just to wrap this up, is I think that Tito should have been the champion going into WrestleMania 2, wrestling and defending against Savage, and this is where Savage wins the championship. So Savage wins the championship on a house show in Boston, which is great. I don't want to take that away from Boston, but he wins it like a month before WrestleMania, or a little bit of a month, like a little month and a half. And again, he fights Savage. Savage and Tito fight the whole rest of the circuit up until WrestleMania. I don't know why Savage doesn't just defeat him at WrestleMania. You'd have another title change, which I know the tag titles changed as well, but you would add a title change. This could have main evented. Maybe you put this on the Rosemont show, like the Chicago show. Because the main event of the Chicago show, I think it was promoted was the Battle Royal, but it was the last match was the Bulldogs. You're not going to main event it over Mr. T and Roddy Piper. Although, you know what? Maybe you do, because no one liked that freaking Mr. T Roddy Piper boxing match anyway. So maybe that's the match before Savage and Tito. And you have Savage and Tito main event Nassau. They tear down the house. You give them as long as they want, 20 minutes or something like that. And you have the two of them put on a classic feud. Savage wins. Savage kind of big shocking finish. It's not sending the crowd home happy or whatever, because it's not the last match of the night. And I think you get an amazing title change. You end on a high note because Savage wins the title at Mania. It's like a big deal. It's just, to me, it seemed like it worked. It worked a lot better. You could have had a hot match. These two could have had a blood feud. You and I always talk about the blood feud between Savage and Steamboat. This would have been a blood feud. This would be a blood feud the following year.
By the way, Valentine and Tito at WrestleMania 1 would have been too, because they were going hot there. Yeah, so here's so I don't disagree with you, but here's the thing, especially the first 2 WrestleManias.
Yeah.
They didn't seem to plan out their whole strategy in long-term booking with these. No. So even if you think about the main event, when did Morocco and Bundy attack Hogan to set up the cage match. It was on the Saturday night's main event that wasn't that far before WrestleMania.
Right.
Like they set it up with like, and so they didn't do that. Junkyard Dog had been feuding with Terry Funk at that point, which is probably nuts. They could have just done a singles match if they had really wanted to, because they did them on the house.
Junkyard Dog and Animal Steel.
Yeah, they could have easily. But you know what's interesting is I thought Tito and JYD had the best match with the Funks on the whole card.
Yeah.
The Valentine and Beefcake versus the Bulldogs, they had only had like one televised match, I think, prior to that. So the thing is with WrestleMania and WrestleMania 2, they didn't really book the feuds at the time into their main event portfolio as a whole.
No.
And that switched at WrestleMania 3. And that's kind of the trajectory they went from there. The first two was all, hey, you know what? I don't necessarily know if we want to like give these off, because I feel like technically they wanted them to go to the house shows or whatever. And I think, so if you look at it from a vacuum standpoint, I get why they didn't book it. And at Boston, they did. Because what will happen is in Boston, when they have the rematches, holy shit, they're going to come and they're going to book. And if you look at the house shows back then, they were booked to the gills, because of what they would do is what they book in the house. And then the rematches, it would build anticipation for the next set of shows. That doesn't make it right. But in that time frame, that's how they booked it. And do I think they should have done it? Probably. But did they make more money in Boston long term because they didn't? I don't know. If you look at like the houses and whatever and what they booked there and looking around it, like, I don't know. It's just interesting because back in the day there, I didn't know that I could watch it on TV. It's so funny going back and looking at all the house shows you can look at now. I had no idea back then I could see any of that. If I did, I would have been freaking in my dreamland. It was amazing.
Well, and that's kind of where I said earlier about how, you know, you would see like who they're running with in the circuit. And when you start to think like, well, is this person really a good champion or not? They're fighting the same guy every week, every day, every other day. You know,
but the matches were good though. They were good.
They were, but it depends on you can't
who
tell
it
me
was.
You can't tell me that string of Bret Hart versus the Mountie matches every friggin' show was amazing.
No, but in the 80s, like if you think about it, like they would book Hogan against Morocco, Hogan against Valentine, and all the different house shows would have different opponents based on where they were at.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing with Backlund. It's like the way they booked in those days was different. So do I agree that it should have been the 1 and 2? They should have had Valentine, Tito. They should have had this one. But based on their booking philosophy at the time, that's why they didn't do it. So that's where I'm kind of going with it. Does that make sense?
It does. I know it hadn't happened yet, but how awesome would it have been if WrestleMania 2 was Savage versus Bruno?
I did a territorial on that too. That was a freaking amazing feud. They did the house shows are amazing.
That territorial was awesome, actually.
Yeah, those house shows are awesome. Like I'll just go back and watch house shows just to watch the feuds they built up into those now, because the Bruno one and the Savage one. I was like, holy shit, there's like a whole like plethora of things I don't even know about.
The Bruno and Savage feud, but that's after he beats up Ricky Steamboat. Yeah,
and that's what the feud they did afterwards, because they had that whole interview backstage after you heard him and he got into it. It was great. It's so good. But yeah, so do I agree with you? Ultimately, yes. But booking philosophy, that wasn't what they did back in the day. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
So is it a shit take? I don't think it's a shit take.
Okay.
I don't think it's a shit take. I think based on the time frame, I don't know how many people would think it's a shit take. Now, the only reason I would say people would say it's a shit take is because the tag team match ended up being the best one out of the whole entire show.
I think it's because I think the only reason why people would think it's a shit take, and this is a shit take on a shit take, is that I think a lot of people enjoyed the will they or won't they relationship between George Steele and Miss Elizabeth.
Oh God, I hated it.
But I think that people like that. Like, I think that was like that's a very like WWF type thing to have be like the overarching story between this feud, is whether or not Savage is going to lose Elizabeth to George Steele, you know, like that kind of thing. Because again, remember, Elizabeth was never, except I think for like her first appearance, she was never booked as like this bad person. Like, she was not a bad man. She was always a sweet and innocent woman who just happened to be Savage's manager, you know, that kind of thing. So that's why the whole idea that like she would leave Savage for Steele kind of made sense, even though it doesn't. But yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Good, it's a shit take.
No,
but, you know.
but but that steel match at WrestleMania 2 ultimately lasted a fucking year and ruined a match at WrestleMania 3. I want you to really process that in your brain right now. A year. That feud lasted a year.
It really did. That's got to be
a waste of Savage. Waste of Savage.
Well,
just saying.
Oh God, Randy's fucking George Steele. That guy.
It's a whole other take, but you're right. There was later on where he started getting matches against other people, and there was a really good run, and that's how Steamboat got involved. Billy Jack Haynes and Steak Roberts, and
You remember when George Steele never entered the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 4?
Yes. God. Anyway.
And Jesse calling him out, and then Gorilla being like, "No, I think I saw him get in and leave."
Well, then you had the whole doll mine, and oh, this is so bad. Anyway. So ultimately, I don't think it's a shit take. I'll align with you. I just think I don't think it's anyway, it's just a pivot in booking and how the time frame of the WWF should have booked back then.
The Hammer, Valentine, many athletes face mid-career crisis. You've got to make a change midstream. You've got a big change happening right now, Hammer. Let the people out there know what the body already knows.
Well, Jesse, you know the success that I've had in the World Wrestling Federation, holding 2 titles in the times that I've been in the World Wrestling Federation. But I'm more excited about what I've got to tell the fans right now than any of those 2 previous titles that I've held.
Surprise them!
So proud!
Yeah! Valentine and Hart! Valentine and Hart! The new alliance! Up to the ring, gentlemen! They're waiting for you there! All right.
He's going to go for the big managers. Valentine snapping over Beefcake. Going for it again. Trying to get the figure 4.
He's got it. He's got it. He's got it hooked.
Beefcake is trying to inch his way over to the scissors. That's what he's reaching for him now. He's trying to inch his way up. Jimmy Hart's going to come for it. He's pointing at the scissors. Beefcake trying to get his hand on the scissors. Valentine squeezing for all he's worth.
I don't know if it's going to be enough. Hart needs to go over there and get
Jimmy Hart dives for the scissors, and he gets it. Beefcake has the scissors. Beefcake's going to go for Valentine.
But he can't stand up. Beefcake can't get to his feet.
All right, Beefcake's going to be assisted back to the dressing room.
Beefcake could have some serious ligament damage here from the way his knees look.
Oh, most definitely. The figure 4 leg lock, 10 seconds.
This one I'm interested in what you think, because this one's a big one for me. Because most people probably even forgot about this feud at the time, because here's the deal. We're going to transition over to Beefcake versus Valentine and my feel on this feud. And here's why I picked this one. So, okay, no, listen. This is
Dream explodes.
All right. So after WrestleMania 3, clearly, Beefcake was face. Dino Bravo and Valentine became the new Dream Team, which was just a shit bag of a tag team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Beefcake was going to become this big face and was going to feud with Adrian Adonis. Coming out of that, Adrian Adonis left. I think he had one more appearance after Mania on syndicated TV. He was gone. Then, so basically, Beefcake had to transition into matches with the manager, Johnny V, because you had Valentine and Bravo booked as a tag team. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a couple matches where he faced Valentine, and I think even on syndicated TV, he faced Dino Bravo in one match. But ultimately, Valentine and Bravo were a tag team. So you get through the Johnny V thing. Valentine does his run with Bravo as a tag team. So what do you do next? You lost your big feud with Adonis. So here we are. So that's in March of '87. So then you get to November of '87. And I think throughout the summer, Beefcake kind of took on Johnny V, took on some other faces. They kind of building him up. He was the barber now. He was getting over. There's no doubt about it. He was getting over, right?
Yeah.
So we go to November 28th, '87 Superstars. And I remember this vividly because I never really thought about Valentine as a singles wrestler because I didn't really know him as a singles wrestler because when I started watching Wrestling Regular, he was already in the tag team with Beefcake. And I do this whole angle and setup with Jesse, which I think is a lot of fun, where, hey, sometimes you get to a midpoint of career and you got to pivot, and blah, 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 blah. And then they have this big surprise, and Jimmy Hart comes out. And Jimmy Hart's managing Valentine as a singles wrestler, which, by the way, I had no idea back in the day that was even a thing to begin with. Like, for me, this was like a whole new experience because he managed him during his Intercontinental title run.
Right.
And so it made sense that these two guys were going to have a match, even though it was months after the fact. And Adrian's gone. And I liked the setup. And so they basically go into the match, and Beefcake is massively over because of Mania 3. He got the Piper rub. He cut Adonis's hair. And the match is kind of cool, I thought. Like, Valentine goes in and does his forearming and stuff. Beefcake comes back, does a bunch of slams and chops. And for a syndicated TV show, this was pretty good, right? For 87, I thought.
Sure.
Two former partners. I thought it was a good match. I liked that they tossed the ref down and they just started going at it. And I thought the ending was good because Beefcake threw Hart and then Valentine went with the figure four, and you had a new feud, a new old feud that never played out that was in it. And I think this gets overlooked because if you think about the feuds of 87, Hogan Andre, right? Savage Steamboat, Jake Roberts, Honky Tonk Man. Then you get into later in this year, you have Savage versus Honky Tonk. And this one kind of gets lost in the weeds a little bit because these guys ultimately feud for months and months and months and months. In our last episode, we talked about when Hogan and Harley Race wrapped their feud up in 88, long after their feud was over. Well, it's kind of the same thing here because this match took place in November of 28 on syndicated TV. Their last match in this feud was on March 12th, 1988 on a Saturday Night's Main Event. So it played out the same way. And so a lot of people forget about this feud. And then I picked another match that we watched that was from Boston from January 9th of 1988, which was like right after that. I mean, the match was okay. It was very short. I don't think it really sold how well the feud was. I wasn't a big fan of the match, but I vividly remember. And by the way, it's also the same Boston show I think you mentioned where Hogan faces Rick Rude.
Yeah,
it's the same one.
Yeah.
So a lot of history in this one for sure. Ultimately, I just think it was a very undervalued feud. I was very invested in it, and this is really a great example of syndicated TV getting me invested in a feud that I never thought I would get invested in.
Sure.
And most people think about Beefcake as being Hogan's bitch, but there was a time frame where he wasn't, and that didn't really become Hogan's bitch technically until 89. And he got way over on his own. Then he had a bunch of shit luck because ultimately they feuded until the March, and then he transitioned to Honky Tonk Man. And in that Saturday Night's Main Event match, Honky Tonk Man even comes out to give Beefcake shit at ringside, which is funny as shit. And then he gets injured or whatever. Ron Bass takes him out of SummerSlam 88, and then in 90 he loses his big shot because he gets the parasailing accident. So anyway, this doesn't have to be a long-winded one to talk about, but for me, very underrated feud, and I loved it, and it made sense. It's probably one of the first times I really thought through former partners becoming better enemies. This would be one of the first ones I really thought through. Based on. So anyway, that's my take. It might be a shit take for some, but I think this feud's very underrated, and I freaking loved it.
No, I mean, I think that again, I know that we talked about this last episode, but when I watched the Brutus Beefcake, those Dark Side of the Rings, man, is so friggin' good because they really make you think about the person in a whole new light almost. And it's funny you talk about Beefcake being Hogan's bitch because I think everybody has always thought that he's been Hogan's bitch,
but he wasn't. But he wasn't, at least not in portrayal his whole career. Later on, yes, but early, no.
Well, and I think that and just on a side note, I think the whole reason why Hogan and Beefcake don't really talk to each other anymore is because I think Beefcake's new, I don't know if it's his wife or just girlfriend or whatever, was like, who's from like Winchester or Quincy. She's from Quincy, Massachusetts, which is just amazing.
Missy Beefcake.
Missy Beefcake. But I think she said, she was like, I think what happened, and they didn't really talk about this, but I think Hogan probably went to Beefcake and was like, hey, Beefer, I need you to do me a favor. Like, can you help a brother out? And she was like, what's he going to get paid? And Hogan was probably like, well, he's going to get paid this. And she's like, no, he's not doing it for that. He's doing it for, X amount of dollars. And Hogan was probably like, that's not going to work for me, brother. And so he cast him off. But if anything, she was just trying to protect her man, stand by your man. So, but yeah, Beefcake was getting over. They did. I mean, looking on again, I always go back to Cage Match to see, and they did have a run during the summer meeting.
Yeah.
Huh? Wait,
it's one of my favorite sites because when I watch matches, I go back and check the Cage Match after I watch it to see how I feel about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny because like post Mania, he teams with the Rougeaus. Beefcake teams with the Rougeaus a lot to go against the Dream
Team event. Johnny V. Yep.
Yeah, and then he starts in with Beefcake and Valentine start kind of in June, so they have like the summer where they're fighting each other, and it's kind of it's kind of a draw really for a feud. Like I think it's like, Beefcake, he beats Valentine a lot with, I think, by DQ or count out over. There are a lot of pinfalls, I think, but then it starts to be a back and forth, almost 50-50 with the two of them. Like you said, right up into 88. This show, the first match that you had, the Superstars one is great. It is great. It's a great, and it's November. It's sweep, so it's a good sweeps match.
Probably Thanksgiving weekend, by the way. I would imagine at that time frame, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah, probably. So, yeah, and yeah. I mean, it is a great matchup. It's fun to watch. I like Greg Valentine. I think the more I go back and watch Valentine's matches, the more I like him.
Keith, we're agreeing too much. So, okay. So remember when I told you I went down the Harley rabbit hole in the last episode? I've done the same thing with Greg Valentine because I always thought of Greg Valentine for me as the dream team Valentine, and I never realized there was a whole other world of Valentine.
Yeah.
And so I go back and I've watched him in matches with Backlund. I've watched some of his older matches with Hogan. I watched his stuff in Mid-Atlantic.
Yep.
The dude is awesome in the ring. Awesome.
It's funny too because whenever the two of them weren't ever doing anything, the house show run would be Tito and Valentine because
I forget that. Jesus, that too.
Because they could always put on a good show with each other, and it was always like they had matches all the way up until I think they even had a face where it was like El Matador versus Valentine. Like it just, or at the very least, it was Tito in like 91, 92. Whenever
what else is a good Valentine feud? Versus Ron Garvin.
Yeah, I know.
It's one of the best things Ron Garvin ever did, actually. It is actually really good. Their match they had at Royal Rumble was very good.
Okay, so, is it one of the best, or is it the best thing Ron Garvin ever did?
One of the best. It's the best thing. It's the best thing he ever did in WWF by far. So
that is true.
Anyway,
but who else had a good feud with him? Ronnie Garvin, the rugged one. It's true though.
I mean, listen. Valentine got Garvin over when he had no right being over in 1990. Let's be real.
I think every episode of this, you should at least mention once Savage and Steamboat and once Ronnie Garvin.
It's going to be like an ongoing theme just because I think it's going to pop me and it'll make you pissed. It'll get you irritated. So I'll probably do it. Maybe.
Especially since not that anybody's going to see this, but we're doing this on video so you can see me. And as soon as you say Ronnie Garvin, my eyes roll. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus, here we go again.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm popping myself when I see your face do that. I'm sorry.
I need to enlist one of my friends that can help me dress and drag as Miss Atlanta Lively, just so I can just parade around the town.
You will not hear me defend that whole thing by any stretch of the imagination. I promise.
I love it.
I promise. Yeah, you will not hear me defend that. Anyway, moving on.
But I think this is an underrated, long forgotten mid card feud, and that's one of the great things about I think 87, 88. Is that any 89, really up until they got to the Attitude Era, really, WWF would invest in their mid-card feuds. I mean, you just mentioned a bunch of them in 87, 88, 89, but like one of the big ones I think of is like the Jake and Rude feud. Like that was a huge feud that they invested a lot of time and energy in. Never had a major payoff, really.
Force Islanders, like, I mean, think about it. Even in all their divisions, it's nuts.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
They even had a mid-card feud with goddamn Danny Davis. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. With Tito.
Yeah. The great Tito Santana.
Yes.
Who I should have talked to at WrestleCon. He was sitting next to Duggan, and I asked Pete, and Pete's like, I don't want to spend any more money. I was like, okay. But I should have gone over and talked to Tito. Like, I should have gone over to talk. I'm mad at myself that I didn't go over and talk to Tito.
So, all right. So going back to Valentine. By the way, I think so. That you're agreeing with me that this is not a bad.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this.
Okay.
Is,
all right. So we're 2 for 2 tonight. I'm a little trepidatious on the first one just based on the booking of the WWF at the time, but I'm not going to argue it at all. That's 2 for 2, man. We're going to have to really like amp up the ante on our next episode of challenging each other.
Well, I think that I think I said the previous episode, or was it maybe this episode, where I said like it's not necessarily a shit take for us; it might be a shit take for the audience. Oh, that's this one. Yeah. I said it's a shit take for the audience because, I mean, yeah. But your shit take is what? That this is just a great long forgotten feud. I mean,
I just think it's I think it's based on perception of Beefcake, and I know in circles Valentine as well. People aren't fans of. I'll throw out. So let me give you an example. Yeah. So on one of the Hidden Gem episodes. One of my Hidden Gem matches was Steamboat versus Valentine in June of '85. Valentine was defending the Intercontinental title against Steamboat.
Yeah.
And Jeff was like, "Oh, fucking Valentine!" Like he hates Valentine. So there are circles that feel like Valentine who don't know Valentine from previous would think that why the fuck are you picking Beefcake and Valentine? You know what I mean? So I just think it's really generational sometimes.
So, all right.
That's
So
where I'm coming from.
how about this let's do a little rebooking maybe. So you go 88. How about Beefer defeats Honky for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 4?
Mm-hmm.
And then
which I'll argue should have happened, by the way.
Yeah. And then immediately goes into a feud with Valentine, and that runs the course of basically all of 88.
And that would have been good because Valentine was in a world title tournament. He beat Steamboat, by the way.
Yep.
Which, better match in WrestleMania 4 than 3 since Steamboat lost to Valentine. No, I'm kidding. But no, I get it. And he was in a tournament, then he would lose in whatever in his match after that, but then transition.
Yeah.
I think that would have been amazing. And that probably would have given him the forefront.
And so for me, like I didn't enjoy Warrior's Intercontinental title run. I didn't like the Warrior anyway. I thought Warrior was stupid.
His feud with Savage is excellent. I'm just saying. It's excellent. Because of Savage.
The 91 one? Oh, the 99 one?
Because of Savage, yeah.
Yeah, but right. And you could have done all that without him ever winning the Intercontinental title. It would have been fine.
100%. He didn't need the belt. Nope.
No.
It's like the Road Warriors. Didn't need the belt.
He could have beaten Hogan. Like, you still could have had Mania 6. Just not had it be title for title. You could have still had like him, and they could have actually done everything that they did in late 89 still with the two of them and not had Warrior be the champion.
That's true.
You could have had that because they had the thing with Genius and Mr. Perfect. You could have had them cross pass at the Rumble. You could have had all that stuff that built up Mania 6. It did not have to be title for title. It could have just been Warrior trying to take over as the world champion. And it would have been fine. And then you could have had anything. You could have done anything from 88 on, Mania 4 on with the Intercontinental title. Have Beefcake and Valentine have a couple of, marquee matches maybe on the house show circuit, and then boom, their match at SummerSlam 88 is like a big matchup, which would have been great. I mean, Beef was supposed to be there anyway, you don't have to have that nonsense with Ron Bass, or at least maybe have Beefcake defending the title against Ron Bass on television, and then something happens, but it doesn't take him out of SummerSlam. It just, whatever, he ends up wrestling Beefcake anyway, or Valentine anyway. You could have done anything. Weren't they on opposing teams at that Survivor Series in 88 anyway? So it's like you could have had them be captains. Beefcake was a captain. It could have been Captain Beefcake and Captain Warrior against whoever, and kind of Warrior and Ron Bass. Who cares? But I think it's taking a lot out, because I mean, Honky Tonk Man has that reign for so long because so many people hated him and loved watching him get his ass kicked, and they wanted to see him. So I don't know if the crowd's going to go just as nuts as they would have, where you got a face world champion, a face tag champ, or a face Intercontinental champion, running the shows. But who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, you brought it up earlier, the Valentine face turn. That's one wrestler that should never be a face. Valentine, it just does not work as a face, brother. It doesn't work.
No.
No.
His face turn is stupid. Like that Madison Square Garden show in 91. It was so dumb. The only cool thing about it is, like, I like seeing Earthquake in marquee matches, and that was kind of a marquee match at Mania.
It was. I mean, Valentine was cooked at that point. Like 91, Valentine, he's like, you're done. Yeah. It's like, go team with Terry Taylor in WCW and win the U.S. tag team titles. It'd be a great tag team.
That's a shit take.
It'd be a great tag team. That is a shit take. It is. Anyway.
Tailor-made man, Mr. Wrestler of the Future.
All right, so Keith, that'll wrap us up for episode number 2. So, so on the first 2, we're net. We agree. I think but what's also good about I think we've done is, even the course of talking about our main topics, we've edited out other shit takes that people could probably point out, which is great, and part of the reason we're doing this as well. So, but anyway, Keith, I know we did plugs last time, but you know what? I'm just going to do a plug here and say, go listen to all the feeds. Go listen to North South. Go listen to PTBN. Go listen to Greetings from Allentown.
Yep.
Go listen to Any Position on North South, and give everything here on the Backbone a listen. This is our second episode. I think Keith and I have both had a really good time doing it. We just go with the flow and kind of have a conversation, and that's how good pods go sometimes, especially when you do it between two wrestling fans, especially ones that like the same kind of errors sometimes.
Absolutely.
So with that,
make you humble.
That's right.
Every time I hear Backbone, I just think of Shiki. Go to break your back, make you humble.
Well, you can thank one Logan Crossan for the name of the Backbone.
Yes.
I love the name. So,
Yes.
All right. So with that, Keith and I will see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everyone.
I'm right and you're wrong, that's the name of this here song. This discussion's gone on way too long. I'm right and you're wrong. They say there's two sides to every scrum. My side's right and your side's dumb. That's the general rule of thumb. I'm right and you're wrong. If I'm right and you're wrong, I guess this can't be a sing-along. 'Cause you'd sing I'm right and that'd be wrong, 'cause I'm right and you're wrong. I'm right and you're wrong, that's the name of this here song. Dang, you sure are headstrong. I'm right and you're wrong. We can agree to disagree on things you're just too blind to see. Else you just agree with me, 'cause I'm right and you're wrong. Please don't cloud the issue with facts. Let's just stick to personal attacks till there ain't no turning back. 'Cause I'm right and you're wrong. I'm right and you're wrong, that's the name of this here song. Civil discourse just don't belong. I'm right and you're wrong. What's that you say? Maybe we should listen. Maybe there's things we've both been missing. Heck, we could wind up hugging and kissing if no one's right or wrong. Now this talking's gone on way too long. There ain't gonna be no brand new dawn, 'cause you're an idiot and I'm King Kong. I'm right and you're wrong. I'm right and you're wrong, that's the name of this here song. It turns out all along I was right and you're wrong. I'm right and you're wrong, that's the name of this here song. This whole thing's gone on way too long. I'm right and you're wrong. Yeah, the world ain't flat, it's just oblong. I'm right and you're wrong. And you're ugly too.